Have you scrolled through the internet lately and just felt something is different?
Mm.
Maybe it seems less human, noisier, perhaps even a little strange or unsettling.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And have you noticed how certain intense ideas, even really wild-sounding ones, seem to just rocket around online?
It's like they gain serious traction incredibly fast.
Yes.
It's a feeling that's become more common for many people, I think, a sense that the digital landscape isn't quite the same place it was a few years ago.
Right, and that the information flowing through it has changed somehow.
Hmm.
And that feeling, along with the spread of these powerful, sometimes unnerving ideas, is exactly what we're diving into today. This deep dive is custom built for you, the listener, who shared this fascinating collection of sources exploring these very phenomena.
Yeah, we've got some great material, an overview covering the long history and psychology of conspiracy theories,
Okay.
details on a very modern internet-specific theory called the dead internet theory, which seems pretty timely,
Right.
then some firsthand accounts from users about how the internet feels right now.
That gut feeling part.
Exactly. And finally, some academic research specifically on what makes any content, including these potent ideas, actually go viral online.
Okay, so our mission in this deep dive is to unpack all of it using these sources. We want to understand the deep human drivers behind why certain ideas resonate. Look at how technology has completely changed the game. Explore a theory that suggests the internet itself is changing fundamentally.
That dead internet idea.
Yeah, and see what the science reveals about the mechanics of information and belief in this digital age.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So maybe we start at the foundation. What exactly are conspiracy theories according to the sources?
Right. The sources explain that at their core, conspiracy theories interpret disputed events not as random occurrences or the actions of isolated individuals,
Okay.
but as secret plots orchestrated by hidden groups. It's always about uncovering a secret explanation behind what happened.
And why do people gravitate towards finding these secret explanations? I mean, what's the appeal?
Well, the sources point to several powerful psychological functions. They can be a way to express deep suspicion or anger towards, say, dominant groups.
Right, feeling powerless.
Yeah, a response to frustration or perceived powerlessness in the face of big events. And historically, they've also been cynically used by those in power to justify persecuting targeted groups.
Okay, that's the darker side.
But beyond that,
At a fundamental level, they seem to tap into a basic human desire to find patterns, to make sense of chaos.
right?
And to uncover mysteries or secrets that people believe are hidden within the accepted official explanations of events.
It's the urge to feel like you know the real story.
Exactly.
So across all these reasons, anger, powerlessness, the desire for secrets, finding hidden patterns, the sources paint a picture of conspiracy thinking, tapping into something deep, maybe an ancient human need.
Yeah, to find order and meaning, especially
Yeah.
when the official story feels insufficient or even threatening. And this is not a new phenomenon, right?
Not at all. The sources are clear. This way of thinking is likely as old as humanity itself.
Wow.
It's linked to basic human instincts like tribalism, trusting your own group and being wary of outsiders.
Us versus them.
Very much. And that fundamental need to attribute cause and effect, to find meaning even in mysterious events. Anxiety over social power and wealth has always been fertile ground for these ideas too.
And the sources show how persistent themes, often tied to economic insecurity and major social change, have just resurfaced and adapted across centuries.
Like the absolutely tragic example the sources mention of the fear of a plot by a Jewish elite.
All right.
A narrative weaponized across history from the Crusades all the way to the Holocaust, and that sadly still circulates today.
It's a chilling demonstration of how a core narrative structure, the hidden malevolent other, can adapt and persist through different eras, always reflecting and amplifying underlying anxieties.
So when did this pattern of thinking become particularly pronounced, say, in Western society?
Well, the sources suggest a significant acceleration in fascination starting around the 17th and 18th centuries.
The Enlightenment era. Interesting.
Yeah, and while the actual term conspiracy theory itself is thought to have arisen in the early 20th century, many of the Western theories we recognize today seem to have roots in the period between 1815 and 1945.
Okay, that's a time of huge change. Wars, industrial revolution.
Exactly. Immense societal, technological, and political upheaval that provided plenty of fuel for these kinds of ideas.
And is this the era that gave rise to the enduring fascination or maybe fear surrounding secret societies?
Absolutely. Groups like the Freemasons and the Bavarian Illuminati gained considerable notoriety in these burgeoning conspiracy narratives.
The Freemasons.
Is that
Quite old, right?
very an ancient fraternal order? Their meetings and rituals were historically kept secret, built around belief in a supreme being and upholding just laws.
So that secrecy plus a sense of history and influence made them perfect targets for theories.
Precisely. And then you have the Bavarian Illuminati, founded in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. They were different, more like a society of intellectuals dedicated to rational analysis.
Okay.
They drew prominent members, but because secret societies were actually prohibited in Bavaria then, they were considered criminal and operated, in the shadows.
Ah, so that combination, secrecy, influential members operating outside the law.
Exactly. It led to widespread belief that they were exerting tremendous hidden influence, fueling hundreds of fictional stories, portraying them as villainous plotters seeking global domination.
So it's not just that they were secret, but the perception of power combined with secrecy that made them ripe for theories. Makes sense. What about in the U.S. specifically? American history seems particularly fertile ground.
It really is. The sources provide great examples. In the early Republic and leading up to the Civil War, there was this widespread fear, a genuine conspiracy belief that European governments or the Catholic Church,
Which was seen as a foreign power, right? Like the Pope being a monarch.
exactly,
Yeah.
that they were actively trying to infiltrate or overthrow the burgeoning U.S. government. This fueled intense anti-Catholic sentiment and even led to political movements like the Know Nothing Party in the mid-1800s.
The Know Nothing Party. They literally got their name because members were instructed to say they knew nothing if asked about the group's activities.
Yeah. You can see how that secrecy fueled the paranoia, right?
Totally. It tapped right back into that suspicion of hidden groups plotting against the perceived us.
Mm-hmm. Then, during the Cold War, the fear shifted. Now, it was a communist plot to control the U.S. government from within through covert agents.
Right, McCarthyism.
Exactly. The McCarthy trials in the 40s and 50s, where thousands were questioned on suspicion of disloyalty, became a stark symbol of how these theories could escalate into widespread paranoia and persecution.
And then the focus seems to shift dramatically inward, towards the U.S. government itself.
It does. The sources highlight a significant shift from the 1960s onward, where conspiracy theories increasingly focused on the U.S. government itself manipulating its own populace.
And this mirrors that dramatic decline in public trust in government we talked about.
Precisely. Falling from nearly 80% in the 1950s to less than 25% by the late 1990s, according to some polls cited.
Wow, that's a massive drop in trust. It makes sense that if you don't trust the official institutions, you're more open to believing alternative, hidden explanations.
Definitely.
And this is the era of those iconic American theories we still hear about. JFK, Area 51.
Precisely. The JFK assassination, for instance, became the basis for one of the most famous and enduring theories, often directly accusing the U.S. government or elements within it.
All right.
Theories about secret government contact with aliens, like the one centered on Area 51, often emerged from this climate of distrust.
And others like the flat earth theory or the deeply harmful idea that vaccines cause autism.
Those persist too.
But it's crucial to remember, as the sources note, that history does contain verified instances of groups conspiring to influence political developments. Real conspiracies happen.
That detail is important because these verified cases are sometimes cited by proponents to lend credibility to unverified theories, sort of blurring the lines between documented history and speculative narrative.
Right, and makes things muddier. And these theories seem to really gain steam during specific moments of stress or change.
Yes, the sources emphasize they become far more prevalent during periods of social unrest, crisis, or significant change, particularly among groups feeling politically or socially disadvantaged.
And they can be weaponized too, right, to justify persecution.
Absolutely. Though historically, mainstream society largely viewed most of these theories as fiction or paranoia or sort of fringe ideas.
But something feels fundamentally different now. What happens when you take this long history of conspiracy thinking and inject it into the hyper-connected, hyper-speed world of the internet and social media?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah.
And the sources are very clear. The internet and social media have acted as an enormous amplifier.
Like pouring gasoline on a fire?
Pretty much. Dramatically increasing the reach, speed, and mainstream visibility of conspiracy theories in contemporary society.
We saw a rise around events like 9/11, didn't we? Theories suggesting prior government knowledge or planning quickly circulated.
Reflecting that underlying distrust we talked about.
Yeah. And the COVID-19 pandemic became a massive breeding ground for theories about origins, treatments, vaccines, everything.
And the sources highlight how certain political figures have played a role in bringing belief in conspiracy theories further into the mainstream.
Okay, let's tread carefully here, just reporting what the sources say.
Right, so neutrally reporting, the sources note that former President Donald Trump promoted various theories, including claims about Ukraine framing Russia, which were proven false, and falsehoods about COVID-19 and the 2020 election. This drew protests from experts concerned about public health and safety.
And supporters placed him at the center of the vast QAnon movement.
Yes, based on claims from an anonymous online commentator about a global government conspiracy and Trump's supposed role as a savior. The sources state QAnon beliefs were repeatedly proven false, but adherents continued adding layers involving a deep state and false flag operations.
The sources also mention President Barack Obama was a magnet for theories, like birtherism, questioning his birth certificate.
Which was also promoted by Donald Trump, according to the sources.
Okay. And other theories about Obama included claims he was secretly Muslim, traveled to Mars, or was the Antichrist. Again, just reporting what the sources present without taking a side.
Right. This widespread proliferation, particularly of increasingly, outlandish theories, is seen by many skeptics as a serious societal threat.
And they cite real-world consequences.
Yeah, things like armed incidents, the January 6th attack linked to election denial theories, and widespread opposition to COVID-19 vaccines.
But the sources also mention there's a counter-argument, right? That maybe the dangers are exaggerated or that these theories are just a modern version of ancient patterns.
Exactly. And they include perspectives from historians, sociologists, and psychologists who suggest these theories are perhaps a natural outgrowth of inherent human desires.
Like exploring the unexplained.
Yeah, or addressing frustrations with secrecy and power imbalances. Or maybe they just have an enduring aesthetic appeal as fictional narratives or plot devices.
So they reflect that drive to untangle mystery and the uneven distribution of power we discussed earlier.
It's this fascinating mix of timeless human psychology meeting cutting-edge technology.
Okay, so speaking of modern technology, there's a specific theory that's emerged recently, one that's a bit of a conspiracy theory about the internet itself.
Yes, this raises an important question. What if the very platform where many of these theories thrive isn't quite what it appears to be?
This is where it gets really interesting. The dead internet theory.
Right. According to the sources, this theory asserts that the internet we experience is now mainly composed of bot activity and automatically generated content.
Not human content.
Mostly not, according to the theory. And it's deliberately manipulated by algorithms to control the population and minimize genuine human activity.
Wait, so the theory is that the internet itself is largely fake, controlled by bots.
That's a core idea.
Yeah.
And proponents believe these bots and automated systems were created intentionally.
Intentionally by who?
Well, perhaps by government agencies or large corporations, specifically to manipulate algorithms, boost certain search results, and influence consumers and public perception. That's the claim.
And they put a date on this death. When did the internet supposedly die?
Generally around 2016 or 2017, according to the theory.
It's hard to nail down exactly where it started, but the sources note it gained traction on sort of esoteric forums like Agora Road's Macintosh Cafe and Wizard Chan.
Okay.
Before spreading to higher profile YouTube channels and even articles like that one in The Atlantic titled, "Maybe You Missed It, but the Internet Died 5 years ago."
So the theory essentially has two main parts. One, the idea that organic human activity has been largely displaced by bots and algorithms. And two, the claim that state actors are deliberately coordinating this effort for manipulation and control.
The idea that bots create a lot of internet content isn't entirely new, is it? The sources mention a New York Magazine article discussing this concern years ago.
True, but the dead internet theory takes it much further. It includes the idea that search engines like Google actively censor the web by filtering content, limiting what's indexed and presented to users.
So you only see what they want you to see.
That's the implication. Combine this with phenomena like link rot, where old links just stop working, making content disappear.
Right, that happens all the time.
And the theory claims the searchable web is much smaller and more curated than it appears.
So Google isn't showing you the whole internet, just a manipulated slice.
That's the idea, leading to this concept, used in the theory, that Google presents a Potemkin village.
Like those fake villages built to impress Catherine the Great.
Exactly, implying the online world we see is just a facade of curated, potentially artificial content designed to mislead us.
That paints a pretty unsettling picture. So what's the evidence proponents point to? Or maybe, what's the feeling that makes this theory resonate with people?
It's definitely both. Experts quoted in the sources view the full theory as largely a paranoid fantasy, while acknowledging that it taps into legitimate criticisms about bot traffic and the integrity of online information.
So some truth mixed with maybe fantasy.
Kind of. It's been described as a mix of genuine conspiracy thinking and internet folklore, or creepypasta. However, the sources also note that some experts agree with the overarching idea that the displacement of human content by AI is, perhaps, an inevitable event.
And the bot traffic data does make you pause, doesn't it? That security firm Imperva report found 52% of all web traffic was automated back in 2016.
Yeah, over half.
And while it's slightly decreased to 49.6% in 2023, that's still basically half the internet traffic being bots. And the recent rise is partly attributed to AI scraping data.
Right. Half the internet traffic not being human interaction definitely adds weight to the feeling that something's off. And the observable rise of content generated by large language models, LLMs like GPT.
Those AI programs that write text make images.
Exactly. They produce very human-like text, images, and other content. And seeing more of that online is a major factor cited as evidence for the dead internet idea.
Think of LLMs like ChatGPT as incredibly sophisticated text and image generators, trained on vast amounts of internet data, capable of sounding and looking remarkably human.
And the sources mention a striking prediction from 2022, purely speculative, of course, but that in a scenario where AI gets loose, 99% to 99.9% of online content could be AI generated by 2025-2030.
Wow, 99%. That's almost everything. Predictions like that must fuel the theory.
For sure. And the release of ChatGPT in late 2022 made the theory feel potentially more realistic for a lot of people because suddenly average users had access to these powerful LLMs.
Right, it wasn't just some abstract tech anymore.
Exactly. Fueling concerns about AI content just drowning out genuine human voices online.
Even Google itself reported in 2024 that its search results were being inundated with websites created purely for search engines, acknowledging the significant role of generative AI in creating content that displaces human-written material.
So Google sees it too.
Seems like it. And there are concerns about bots using LLMs to create self-replicating prompts, leading to endless loops of automated content interacting with itself in ways only humans might be able to disrupt.
Like bots talking to bots endlessly.
Kind of, yeah. And we see examples across platforms that users point to as evidence for this feeling. On Facebook, there's been a rise of viral AI-generated images, sometimes called AI slop.
Ah, like that weird shrimp Jesus image.
Exactly. Often accompanied by AI-generated amen comments. These are seen by some as symptomatic of the shift, a messenger for the fatal system, as one source put it.
And Meta itself is adding features like AI-generated group responses and plans for future AI-powered autonomous accounts that will exist in the same way that accounts do on their platforms.
Which proponents say just validates their concerns, right?
On Reddit, changes to their API, the way other programs access Reddit data, partly for AI training, along with an increase in LLM using bots are cited. Users describe AI content flooding the site, echoing the dead internet feeling, and worry about future AI being trained on data created by previous AI.
So AI learning from AI, potentially degrading quality over time.
That's the concern. Twitter had those viral, I hate texting tweets that many suspected were driven by bot likes.
Right, I remember that.
And the whole public debate during Elon Musk's acquisition about the actual percentage of bots on the platform.
Oh yeah, the numbers were all over the place.
Exactly. With estimates varying widely from Twitter's claimed under 5% to commissioned studies estimating 13.7% and 5.3%. Believers use this uncertainty as evidence that the bot problem is significant and perhaps intentionally obscured.
TikTok's discussions about offering virtual influencers for advertising.
Linked to this idea of AI slime content displacing human creativity.
And on YouTube, there's a long-standing market for fake views, but YouTube engineers even coined the term the inversion.
The inversion? What's that?
It was a fear they had that their algorithms might start misclassifying real human views as fake because bot activity was so prevalent and hard to distinguish.
Wow. Think about that. The bots became so dominant, YouTube's own system started struggling to tell real humans from fake ones.
Yeah. That's a powerful and unsettling image that definitely fuels the dead internet idea.
There's even a new app, Social AI, launched in 2024, specifically designed only for chatting with AI bots. The sources link this directly to the theory, suggesting a future where human interaction online becomes secondary or maybe even unnecessary.
And then there's that feeling described by real users like those in the Reddit thread you share, that human experience part.
Right. They talk about feeling like a conspiracy nut
Yeah.
because they're constantly second-guessing everything they read online.
Feeling paranoid just browsing.
Yeah. They have a sense that cheap, trivial online psyops or astroturfing on steroids are easy to deploy now. There's a feeling of isolation. A sudden rise in fake-feeling sensational stories, often rage bait, designed purely to provoke a reaction in a sense that once vibrant online communities feel quieter.
Like the life has gone out of them.
Sort of. Users notice their friends repeating online rhetoric back to them and feel like this shift has been drastic recently, with one user mentioning it feeling particularly acute in just the last 2-3 months.
And one user in the thread felt that if the documented Russian influence on the 2016 election was effective with less sophisticated methods,
then the amount of online misinformation and astroturfing has surely skyrocketed since.
yeah, and that governments are likely heavily involved now.
So while the full dead internet conspiracy theory might be viewed as extreme by experts, the underlying observations about dramatically increased bot traffic, the proliferation of AI content,
And that widespread feeling of a changing, less authentic, potentially manipulated internet.
clearly resonate with many users and are supported by some, well, concerning data points about the nature of online traffic and content.
It captures a very real anxiety about the digital world we now inhabit.
Definitely.
So, what does this all mean? We've traced the deep historical roots of conspiracy theories and the psychological needs they tap into. We've seen how the internet has amplified these ideas, leading to modern manifestations like QAnon and the spread of politically charged falsehoods. And we've explored the dead internet theory, which speaks to the unsettling feeling that the online world itself is being overtaken by automation and potentially manipulated. Why do these specific kinds of ideas, the ones that feel intense or make us unsettled or angry, seem to spread so effectively online?
This is where the academic research on online content virality offers a crucial piece of the puzzle. It helps us understand the underlying mechanics of how information gets shared, regardless of its subject matter or truthfulness.
Right. The sources shared research by Jonah Berger and Catherine Milkman on this very topic. They wanted to know why certain pieces of online content catch fire and go viral while others just fizzle out.
Is it just random luck, or is there a predictable pattern?
Yeah.
They took a psychological approach, focusing on how emotion shapes whether something gets shared. They analyzed nearly 7,000 New York Times articles over 3 months to see which ones made the most emailed list, which about 20% did.
Okay. And they did experiments too.
Yeah, to test their ideas directly.
And what did they find about emotion? Was it key?
Absolutely key. Their initial finding was that positive content is more viral than negative content overall.
Okay, so happy news spreads more easily. That makes sense, right? Feels good to share good news.
It does, but the relationship is far more complex. It's not just about whether the emotion is good or bad. They looked at specific emotions and introduced this key concept of physiological arousal.
Arousal, like how much energy or intensity the emotion generates in you, that feeling of being activated.
Exactly. It's that feeling your heart might race a little, you feel a surge of energy, whether that's from excitement or stress. Their central hypothesis, which the research strongly supported, is that content that evokes high arousal emotions is more viral, regardless of whether that emotion is positive or negative.
Whoa, okay. That's the kicker, isn't it? So a high arousal positive emotion, like awe.
Absolutely increases the likelihood of content being shared, according to their study, like seeing something amazing online.
But high arousal negative emotions, like anger or anxiety.
The research found that they also significantly increase virality.
So being angry online literally makes you more likely to share that content. That explains a lot about the internet, doesn't it?
It's a powerful insight, yeah. Conversely, content that evokes low arousal emotions, emotions that are more deactivating, is less viral.
Like sadness.
Exactly. Sadness, for instance, was found to decrease the likelihood of sharing.
So sadness makes you feel withdrawn, less energized, right? You're less likely to act on that feeling by sharing something online. Unlike anger, which makes you want to do something, to express yourself, maybe warn others.
That's exactly what their experiments confirmed. By manipulating specific emotions, comparing high arousal emotions like amusement or anger to low arousal sadness, they showed that the level of activation induced by the emotion was the driving force behind transmission.
So the feeling itself drives the sharing.
Right. Content that made people feel more amused or angry was shared more because it induced more physiological arousal, while content that made people feel sad was shared less.
And the impact of emotion was significant, like comparable to even external factors like how much promotion an article gets.
Yes, the study found that these inherent characteristics of the content, like the emotion it evokes, were incredibly important, sometimes even exceeding the impact of external factors like how prominently an article was featured on a homepage.
Wow.
They noted that a one standard deviation increase in anger, for example, increased the odds of an article making the most emailed list by 34%.
34% just from anger.
Yeah. The sources highlight this is equivalent to nearly 4 times the average hours an article spent as a lead story on the NYT homepage. Awe had a similar impact, increasing odds by 30%.
That's wild. So it's not just seeing the content, it's how it makes you feel emotionally and physiologically that drives you to share it. That internal reaction.
Seems like it. And this held true even when they controlled for other things.
Yes, they accounted for factors like how interesting, surprising, or practically useful the article was, as well as length, author fame, and where it was placed on the site. The effect of emotion, particularly arousal, held even when controlling for these other things that also increase virality.
Okay. This really brings everything together, doesn't it?
I think so. Conspiracy theories, at their core, tap into those deep human psychological needs, the desire for understanding, anxieties about power and control, tribalism, the appeal of uncovering secrets. And crucially, they often evoke strong, high arousal emotions. Anger towards perceived hidden enemies, anxiety about unknown threats, frustration with perceived powerlessness. Maybe even a dark awe at the scale of the supposed deception.
And the dead internet theory speaks directly to very modern anxieties, fear of manipulation by powerful, opaque tech companies, distrust of algorithms, the unsettling feeling that our online world isn't authentic.
Feelings that very often manifest as anxiety, frustration, and maybe a touch of anger, all high arousal states.
Right, and the science of virality tells us that content designed to evoke precisely these high arousal emotions, anger and anxiety being specifically mentioned in the study, is exactly the type of content most likely to be shared and spread online.
It creates a powerful feedback loop then.
How so?
Well, the internet provides an incredibly efficient medium for emotionally charged ideas to spread quickly. Conspiracy theories, by their very nature, are often highly emotionally charged.
Okay.
So ideas that make people feel angry or anxious are rewarded with virality, they gain wider reach.
Potentially reinforcing those very feelings and increasing distrust in a self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah, I see it.
And understanding this dynamic is key to navigating the online world you experience every day. The one you initially felt was different, maybe unsettling. It helps you recognize why certain narratives, even if they feel unbelievable, can gain so much traction and seem so pervasive online. It's not just the idea itself, but the powerful feeling it generates.
Amplified by the very mechanics of the platforms where these ideas live.
Yeah.
It allows us to see the mechanics at play behind the spread of information and understand how timeless human psychology interacts with the new realities of the digital age.
So we've journeyed from the ancient human impulse to seek hidden patterns and fear secret groups through historical examples fueled by anxiety and social change.
Right.
To the modern amplification of these ideas by the internet and the specific unsettling dead internet theory that speaks to contemporary digital fears.
And we've seen how the science of what makes content viral highlights the powerful, often unconscious role that high arousal emotions like anger and anxiety play in what gets shared online.
Revealing that the feel of content can be as important or maybe even more important than its factual basis in determining its spread.
It's a complex interplay of history, psychology, technology, and emotion.
It really is.
So here's a final thought, something to maybe mull over. Given that the research suggests content making us feel angry or anxious is disproportionately likely to spread online, how does that shape the overall online world we experience every day? And what does that mean for how we evaluate the information we encounter and what we ultimately come to believe is true in this highly aroused digital environment?